The lights in the medical bay flashed red as alarms screamed through the corridors of station. Alpha 7, Dr. Elena Vasquez ran down the hallway, her medical bag bouncing against her hip. She had been eating lunch when the emergency call came in. Now, 20 minutes later, she was rushing toward what might become the biggest medical crisis in galactic history. "What do we have?" Elena asked as she burst through the doors of the main medical ward. Commander Thale, a tall reptilian with green scales and yellow eyes, turned to face her. His usually calm face showed worry. "The Narration female collapsed during the peace talks. She's dying, Doctor." Elena looked at the medical table where a young alien woman lay unconscious. Her skin was bright blue with silver patterns that seemed to glow softly. She was beautiful in a strange way, but Elena could see she was in serious trouble. Her breathing was fast and shallow, and her blue skin was turning darker. "This is Kira," Commander Thale explained. "She's the daughter of the Narration Prime Minister. If she dies here, it could start a war." Elena felt her stomach drop. No pressure at all, she thought. She moved closer to examine the patient. Kira's species lived in deep oceans on water worlds. They were known for being peaceful traders, but they were also very proud. Losing their leader's daughter would be seen as a huge insult. "What happened to her?" Elena asked, pulling out her medical scanner. "Unknown pathogen," replied Dr. Vex, a spider-like alien with 8 thin arms. He was the station's head of xenobiology. "Her Gill ducts are blocked. The toxins can't leave her body." Elena frowned as she studied the scanner readings. The Narration body was like a biological filter system. They breathed through their skin and cleaned their blood through special ducts behind their gills. If those ducts were blocked, poison would build up fast. "Can't we just clear the blockage?" Elena asked. Dr. Vex made a clicking sound with his mouthparts. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a holographic display of Kira's anatomy. "The ducts are only 0.3 millimeters wide. They're protected by biometallic scales that evolved to stop deep-sea predators. Our surgical tools are too big." Elena studied the display. It was like trying to perform surgery through a keyhole while wearing thick gloves. "What about the microsurgery robots?" "Too large," Dr. Vex replied. "The smallest one we have is 0.5 millimeters. It won't fit." Another alarm started beeping. Elena looked at the monitors and saw Kira's vital signs dropping. Her heart rate was too fast, and her blood pressure was falling. "How long does she have?" Elena asked. "At this rate?" "Maybe 4 hours," Dr. Vex said quietly. Elena felt panic rising in her chest. 4 hours to save a life and prevent a war. She looked around the medical bay and saw other doctors from different species working frantically. There was Dr. Kelt, a being made of living crystal who specialized in biomechanical interfaces. Dr. Nara, a gas-based life form who understood toxins better than anyone. Dr. Zorn, whose people had invented half the medical technology in the galaxy. All of them were some of the smartest beings in known space. And none of them could save one young woman. "There has to be something we can do," Elena said. Commander Thale's communication device beeped. He listened to it for a moment, then his face grew even more serious. "The Narration fleet is on its way. They'll be here in 6 hours. Elena felt her heart skip. The Narrations were peaceful, but they were also powerful. If they thought the station had let their princes die, there would be consequences. "We need to try something," Elena said. "What if we use a different approach?" Dr. Vex's 8 eyes all focused on her. "What do you mean? What if we don't go through the ducts? What if we go around them?" Dr. Kelt made a sound like wind chimes. "Impossible. The scales are too thick. Any attempt to cut through them would cause massive trauma. She would die before we could help her." Elena looked at Kira's still form. The young alien's breathing was getting weaker. Time was running out. "There has to be another way," Elena muttered. She walked around the medical table, studying Kira from every angle. The biometallic scales covered most of her body like armor. They were beautiful but deadly in this situation. Evolution had made them perfect protection, but now they were a prison. "What about chemical dissolution?" Elena asked. Dr. Nara, the gas-based doctor, swirled in a negative pattern. Too dangerous. The chemicals that could dissolve the scales would also dissolve her internal organs. Elena bit her lip. She was running out of ideas. Her medical training had prepared her for many things, but not this. Humans were still new to galactic medicine. Most of the time, they just watched and learned from species that had been practicing medicine for thousands of years. The door to the medical bay opened, and Marcus Rivera walked in. He was a human maintenance engineer who worked on the station's systems. He was tall and lean with dark hair and steady hands. Elena had seen him around, but never really talked to him. "Sorry to bother you, Doc," Marcus said to Elena. "I was fixing the air system and heard all the alarms. Is everything okay?" Elena was about to tell him to leave when she noticed something. Marcus was carrying a toolbox full of very small, precise instruments. His hands were steady even in the chaos of the medical bay. "We're trying to save her," Elena said, pointing to Kira, "but we can't get to the blocked ducts. They're too small for our tools." Marcus set down his toolbox and looked at the holographic display. He studied it for a long moment, then looked at Kira. "How small?" he asked. 0.3 millimeters, Elena replied. Marcus nodded slowly. "I've worked with smaller spaces than that." The alien doctors looked at him with surprise. Commander Thale moved closer. "What do you mean, human?" The commander asked. Marcus opened his toolbox and pulled out a fiber optic cable thinner than a human hair. "I use these to fix communication systems inside the station's walls. Some of the spaces are so small that even my tools barely fit." Elena felt a spark of hope. "But this is medical surgery, not mechanical repair." Marcus looked at her with serious eyes. "I was a combat medic before I became an engineer. I've done surgery in foxholes with nothing but field tools." The medical bay fell silent except for the beeping of Kira's monitors. Elena looked at the other doctors, then at Marcus. "You think you can do this?" she asked. Marcus studied the holographic display again. "Maybe, but I'll need help." Elena felt her heart racing. It was crazy. It was impossible. But it might be there. "Only chance. What do you need?" she asked. Marcus smiled grimly. "Time to get creative." Marcus set his toolbox on the medical table next to Kira's unconscious form. The alien doctors watched him with curious eyes, but Elena could see doubt in their faces. She understood why. Marcus was just a maintenance worker to them. What could he possibly know about advanced alien medicine? "Show me exactly what's wrong," Marcus said to Dr. Vex. The spider-like doctor clicked his mandibles together in what Elena knew was annoyance. "Human, this is not a broken pipe or a damaged computer. This is complex xenobiology. I understand that," Marcus replied calmly. "But I need to see the problem before I can think of a solution." Dr. Vex reluctantly activated the holographic display. A three-dimensional image of Kira's internal anatomy appeared in the air above her body. Elena had seen it before, but looking at it again made her realize how truly impossible the situation was. "These are the Gill ducts," Dr. Vex explained, pointing to tiny tubes that ran from Kira's gills to her internal organs. "They filter toxins from her bloodstream. The blockage is here, here, and here." Red markers appeared at 3 different points. Marcus studied the display carefully. He walked around it, examining it from every angle. "What kind of blockage?" "Unknown pathogen," Dr. Vex said. "It creates a biofilm that hardens like cement. Once it sets, it's nearly impossible to remove." "How did she get infected?" Elena asked. Commander Thale stepped forward. "We're not sure. Kira was visiting the station as part of a cultural exchange program. She spent time in different sections, meeting various species." "The pathogen could have come from anywhere," Marcus nodded. "And you can't just dissolve the blockage?" Dr. Nara, the gas-based doctor, swirled in a negative pattern. "The chemicals strong enough to dissolve the biofilm would also dissolve her organs. It would kill her faster than the toxins." Elena watched as Marcus continued to study the holographic display. His face was serious, but she could see his mind working. He was looking at the problem differently than the other doctors. "What about going in from a different angle?" Marcus asked. Dr. Kelt, the crystal being, made a sound like breaking glass. Impossible. The biometallic scales are too thick. They evolved to protect against the crushing pressure of deep ocean trenches. No known tool can cut through them without causing fatal trauma. Marcus reached out and touched the holographic display, zooming in on the scales. How thick? Approximately 2.3 centimeters at the thickest point, Dr. Vex replied. And they're not just thick. They're composed of a biometallic alloy that's stronger than most spacecraft hulls. Elena felt her heart sink. The more they learned about Kira's anatomy, the more impossible the situation seemed. Evolution had made the Narrators nearly indestructible, but now that same protection was killing her. An alarm beeped, and Elena looked at the monitors. Kira's condition was getting worse. Her breathing was more shallow, and her blue skin was turning a dark purple color. How much time do we have now? Elena asked. Dr. Vex checked his instruments. Less than 3 hours. The toxin buildup is accelerating. Commander Thale's communication device chirped. He listened for a moment, then his face grew grim. The Narration fleet has increased speed. They'll be here in 4 hours. Elena felt panic rising in her chest. If Kira died before her people arrived, the consequences would be terrible. The Narrators were peaceful, but they were also proud. They would see her death as a failure of the station's medical facilities, maybe even as deliberate negligence. We need to try something, Elena said desperately. Anything. Dr. Vex's 8 eyes focused on her. We've tried everything, Doctor. Vasquez, the greatest medical minds in the galaxy are here. If we can't save her, no one can. Marcus looked up from the holographic display. What if you're thinking about this wrong? The alien doctors turned to stare at him. Dr. Kelt made a sound like wind chimes. What do you mean, human? You're all thinking like doctors, Marcus said. But what if this isn't a medical problem? What if it's an engineering problem? Elena frowned. I don't understand. Marcus pointed to the blocked ducts in the holographic display. Look at this. It's like a plumbing system that's got clogged. You don't need to cut through the pipes to fix it. You need to find another way to clear the blockage. Dr. Vex made an irritated clicking sound. We've already established that chemical dissolution is too dangerous. What about mechanical removal? Marcus asked. The ducts are too small for any of our instruments. Dr. Narrator replied. Marcus opened his toolbox and pulled out several thin fiber optic cables. What about these? Elena looked at the cables. They were incredibly thin, much thinner than the medical instruments she was used to. Those are communication cables. Right, Marcus said. But they're flexible, they're strong, and they're small enough to fit through a 0.3 millimeter opening. Dr. Vex examined one of the cables. This is not a medical instrument. It has no sensors, no cutting capability, no... It doesn't need those things, Marcus interrupted. It just needs to reach the blockage and break it up. Elena felt a spark of hope. You think you can modify them? Marcus nodded. I've done stranger things. Give me access to your medical fabrication unit, and I can create micro tools that will fit through those ducts. Commander Thale stepped forward. Human, do you understand what you're suggesting? This is not a training exercise. If you fail, Kira dies. Marcus looked at the commander steadily. If I don't try, she dies anyway. The medical bay fell silent except for the constant beeping of Kira's monitors. Elena looked at the other doctors. She could see doubt in their faces, but also desperation. They were running out of options? What would you need? Elena asked. Marcus pointed to the medical fabrication unit in the corner of the room. Access to that, some basic materials, at about an hour to prepare. Dr. Vex made a skeptical sound. You want to perform microsurgery with modified communication cables? I want to save her life, Marcus replied simply. Elena looked at Kira's still form. The young alien's breathing was getting weaker by the minute. Time was running out, and they had no other options. Commander, Elena said, I think we should let him try. Commander Thale was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. Very... Well, but I will hold you personally responsible for the outcome, human. Marcus picked up his toolbox. I understand, sir. As Marcus walked toward the fabrication unit, Elena felt a mixture of hope and fear. What they were about to attempt had never been done before. They were going to perform surgery using tools that weren't designed for medicine, guided by a human who wasn't trained in alien anatomy. But as she watched Marcus begin to work, Elena noticed something. His hands were completely steady even, under the pressure of the situation. He worked with the confidence of someone who had solved impossible problems before. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The next hour would determine whether Kira lived or died. And with her, the fate of peace between species hung in the balance. Marcus stood in front of the medical fabrication unit, his hands moving quickly over the control panel. Elena watched him work, amazed by how confident he seemed. The alien doctors stood behind them, whispering among themselves in their native languages. "What exactly are you making?" Elena asked. Marcus didn't look up from his work. "Microsurgical tools. I'm taking the fiber optic cables and modifying them with tiny cutting edges and suction capabilities." Dr. Vex clicked his mandibles together. "This is madness. You cannot create precision medical instruments from communication equipment." "Watch me," Marcus replied calmly. Elena moved closer to see what he was doing. Inside the fabrication unit, she could see the thin cables being modified. Marcus was attaching incredibly small metal tips to their ends, each one no bigger than a grain of sand. "How do you know how to do this?" Elena asked. Marcus glanced at her briefly. "I spent 3 years as a combat medic in the Earth Defense Force. We didn't always have proper medical equipment. Sometimes you had to make do with whatever you could find." "But this is alien anatomy," Dr. Kelt protested, his crystal form glowing with agitation. "Human medical training is irrelevant here." Marcus pulled the first modified cable from the fabrication unit. It looked like a hair-thin wire with a microscopic tool at the end. "Maybe, but clogged tubes are clogged tubes no matter what species they belong to." Elena admired his confidence, but she could see the doubt in the alien doctors' faces. They had studied xenobiology for decades. Marcus was just a maintenance worker who used to be a soldier. "Explain your plan," Commander Thale said. His voice was stern but not unfriendly. Marcus activated a holographic display showing Kira's Gill ducts. "The blockage is here, here, and here," he said, pointing to the 3 red markers. "I'm going to insert these modified cables through her gill openings. They're small enough to fit through the ducts without causing damage." Dr. Nara swirled in a questioning pattern. "How will you see what you're doing? The cables have no cameras, no sensors." Marcus smiled for the first time since entering the medical bay. "That's where Dr. Vasquez comes in. She's going to guide me using the medical scanners." Elena felt her heart skip. "Me? But I've never done anything like this before." "Neither have I," Marcus admitted. "But you understand the anatomy better than I do. And I understand the tools better than you do. Together we might be able to save her." An alarm beeped, and everyone looked at the monitors. Kira's vital signs were getting worse. Her breathing was very shallow now, and her blue skin had turned almost black. "We're running out of time," Elena said urgently. Marcus nodded. "Then let's get started." He walked over to Kira's unconscious form and examined her gills. They were beautiful, with intricate patterns that looked like silver lace. But Elena could see they were clogged with the hardened biofilm. "I'll need to sedate her more deeply," Elena said. "Even unconscious, her body might react to the intrusion." Dr. Vex prepared a syringe with Narration-specific anesthetic. "This will keep her completely still, but it will also slow her heart rate even more." Elena looked at the monitors. Kira's heart was already beating too slowly. "More sedation might kill her, but the procedure would be impossible without it." "Do it," Marcus said quietly. Dr. Vex administered the medication. Kira's already weak vital signs dropped further. Elena felt sick watching the monitors, but Marcus remained focused. "Okay," Marcus said, picking up the first modified cable. "Guide me in." Elena positioned herself at the medical scanner. She could see inside Kira's body in real time, watching as Marcus carefully inserted the thin cable through. "The first gill opening, left a little," Elena said. Now forward, stop. The cable was inside the first duct, approaching the blockage. Elena could see the hardened biofilm on her scanner. It looked like concrete inside a narrow pipe. There, she said. Can you see it? Marcus couldn't actually see anything. He was working entirely by feel and Elena's guidance. I can feel resistance. This must be the blockage. The room fell silent except for the beeping monitors. Everyone watched as Marcus began to work. Elena could see the tiny tool at the end of the cable making contact with the biofilm. It's not working, Dr. Vex said after a few minutes. The blockage is too hard. Marcus didn't respond. He was completely focused on his work. Elena watched the scanner as he tried different approaches, using the tiny tool to chip away at the hardened material. Wait, Elena said suddenly. Something's happening. On the scanner, she could see small pieces of the biofilm beginning to break away. Marcus was making progress, but it was incredibly slow. How long will this take? Commander Thale asked. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. I don't know. This first blockage is really stubborn. Elena looked at the monitors. Kira's condition was critical. Her heart rate was dangerously low, and her oxygen levels were dropping. We might not have time to clear all 3 blockages, Elena said quietly. Marcus paused in his work. What if we don't need to clear all 3? Dr. Vex's 8 eyes focused on him. What do you mean? What if clearing just 1 duct is enough to start the process? Marcus asked. Maybe her body can handle the rest once we get some flow going. Elena thought about it. It was possible. If they could clear even 1 duct, it might reduce the toxin buildup enough to stabilize Kira. It's worth trying, she said. Marcus nodded and went back to work. Elena watched the scanner as he continued to chip away at the biofilm. Slowly, very slowly, the blockage began to break up. It's working, Elena said excitedly. I can see flow starting. On the scanner, she could see fluid beginning to move through the cleared section of the duct. It wasn't much, but it was something. Suddenly the monitors began to beep more rapidly. Elena looked at Kira's vital signs and felt her heart race. Her heart rate is increasing, she said. Blood pressure is rising. Dr. Vex checked his instruments. The toxin levels are dropping. Not much, but they're dropping. Marcus smiled grimly. 1 down, 2 to go. But as he reached for the second cable, Commander Thale's communication device chirped urgently. He listened for a moment, then his face grew pale. The Narration fleet has arrived early, he announced. They're demanding to see their princes immediately. Elena felt her stomach drop. How long do we have? They're docking now, Commander. Thale replied. Maybe 20 minutes before they reach the medical bay? Marcus looked at the remaining 2 blockages on the scanner. I can't clear 2 more blockages in 20 minutes. The room fell silent. They had made progress, but it wasn't enough. Kira was still dying, and her people were about to discover that the galaxy's best medical station couldn't save her. We have to try, Elena said desperately. Marcus nodded and picked up the second cable. Then let's work faster. As he began working on the second blockage, Elena could hear voices in the corridor outside. The Narrations had arrived, and they were coming to see their princes. Time was running out. Marcus's hands moved quickly as he inserted the second modified cable into Kira's Gill opening. Sweat dripped from his forehead, but his hands remained perfectly steady. Elena watched the scanner, guiding him toward the second blockage. Right 2 millimeters, Elena said, now down slightly. The voices in the corridor were getting louder. Elena could hear heavy footsteps and the sound of multiple beings moving toward the medical bay. The Narrations were coming, and they sounded angry. How much time? Marcus asked without looking up. Commander Thale checked his communication device. 15 minutes, maybe less, Marcus nodded grimly. Then we work faster. Elena watched the scanner as Marcus reached the second blockage. This one looked even harder than the first. The biofilm had formed thick layers, completely sealing the duct. This one's worse, Elena said quietly. I can feel it, Marcus replied. It's like trying to drill through stone. Dr. Vex moved closer to watch. Perhaps we should tell the Narrations what we're attempting, They might give us more time. No, Commander Thale said firmly. If they see their princess in this condition, they'll blame us for letting her get worse. We need to show them progress. Marcus began working on the second blockage. Elena could see him using a different technique this time. Instead of chipping away at the biofilm, he was trying to break it into larger pieces. What are you doing? Elena asked. Combat surgery taught me that sometimes you have to be more aggressive, Marcus explained. If I can break this into big chunks, I can pull them out through the gill opening. Elena watched nervously as Marcus worked. The technique was riskier, but it was also faster. On the scanner, she could see the biofilm beginning to crack. It's working, she said excitedly. Suddenly, a large piece of the blockage broke free. Elena watched it move through the duct toward the gill opening, but then it stopped. It's stuck, Elena said. The piece is too big to come out, Marcus frowned. I need to break it up more. But as he tried to manipulate the cable, the piece shifted and blocked the duct completely. On the monitors, Kira's vital signs began to drop rapidly. Her oxygen levels are crashing. Elena said in panic. Dr. Vex checked his instruments. The blockage is worse than before. We've made the situation critical. Elena felt terror rising in her chest. They had been trying to save Kira, but they might have killed her instead. The monitors were beeping frantically as her vital signs continued to fall. I have to get that piece out, Marcus said urgently. How? Elena asked. Marcus thought for a moment, then picked up a third cable. I'm going to push it from behind while pulling it from the front. Dr. Kelp made a sound like breaking glass. That's impossible. You can't coordinate two instruments that precisely. I have to try, Marcus said. Elena watched in amazement as Marcus inserted the third cable through a different gill opening. She had never seen anyone work with such precision under pressure. His hands moved independently, controlling both cables at the same time. Guide me, Marcus said to Elena. Elena focused on the scanner. First cable, move left. Second cable, forward. Now both together. The voices in the corridor were very close now. Elena could hear someone speaking in the musical language of the narrations. They were almost at the medical bay. 10 minutes, Commander Thale warned. Elena watched the scanner as Marcus worked both cables. It was like watching a master surgeon, except he was working blind with tools he had made himself. Almost there, Marcus said through gritted teeth on the scanner. Elena could see the stuck piece of biofilm being carefully maneuvered. Marcus was using one cable to push while the other pulled, slowly working the obstruction toward the gill opening. It's moving, Elena said. Suddenly, the piece broke free and came out through the gill opening. Elena watched the scanner as fluid began to flow through the second duct. Yes, she said. That's 2 down. Kira's vital signs immediately began to improve. Her oxygen levels rose and her heart rate stabilized. But Elena knew it still wasn't enough. The third blockage was the largest, and they were running out of time. The door to the medical bay burst. Open 3 tall figures in flowing robes entered. They were narrations with blue skin and silver patterns like Kira's. But these were older, more dignified, and clearly very important. Where is our princess? The lead narration demanded. His voice was deep and carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Elena recognized him from the diplomatic files. This was Prime Minister Coral, Kira's father. The 2 others were likely his advisors or generals. Commander Thale stepped forward. Prime Minister, we are currently treating your daughter. She is stable, but stable? Prime Minister Coral moved toward the medical table where Kira lay unconscious. When he saw her dark blue skin and the cables inserted in her gills, his face changed. What have you done to her? We're saving her life, Elena said quickly. Prime Minister Coral's eyes focused on Marcus, who was still working on the third and final blockage. Who is this human? Why is he touching my daughter? The room fell silent. Elena could feel the tension building. If the narrators stopped the procedure now, Kira would die. He's the only one who can help her, Elena said. Prime Minister Coral looked at the monitoring displays showing Kira's vital signs. Elena could see him trying to understand what was happening. Explain, he demanded. Commander Thale quickly explained the situation. As he spoke, Elena watched Prime Minister Coral's expression change from anger to concern to something that might have been hope. "You're telling me that this human engineer is performing surgery on my daughter with communication cables?" Prime Minister Coral asked. "Yes, sir," Elena replied. Prime Minister Coral was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Marcus, who was still working steadily on the final blockage. "How much longer?" the Prime Minister asked. Marcus looked up for the first time since the Narrators had entered. 5 minutes, sir. Maybe less." Prime Minister Coral nodded slowly. "Then we wait." Elena felt relief wash over her. They had permission to continue. Now they just had to succeed. Marcus went back to work on the third blockage. This one was the most difficult yet. The biofilm was thick and hard, and it was in the deepest part of the duct system. "This is the big one," Marcus said to Elena. "If I can clear this, she should be fine." Elena watched the scanner as Marcus worked. She could see him using everything he had learned from the first 2 blockages. He was patient but persistent, careful but determined. "Almost there," Elena said. On the scanner, she could see the final blockage beginning to break up. Piece by piece, Marcus was clearing the duct. "It's working," Elena said excitedly. Suddenly, the blockage gave way completely. Elena watched as fluid rushed through the cleared duct. All 3 pathways were now open, and Kira's body began to filter the toxins from her blood. The monitors began to beep with good news. Kira's vital signs were improving rapidly. Her skin was already beginning to return to its normal bright blue color. "She's going to be okay," Elena said, tears in her eyes. Marcus pulled the cables from Kira's gills and stepped back. His hands were shaking slightly from exhaustion, but he was smiling. Prime Minister Coral moved to his daughter's side. As he watched, Kira's eyes fluttered open. "Father?" she said weakly. Prime Minister Coral took her hand. "I'm here, my daughter. You're safe." Kira looked around the medical bay, her eyes finally focusing on Marcus. "Who are you?" Marcus smiled. "Just someone who wanted to help." Prime Minister Coral stood and faced Marcus. "Human, you have saved my daughter's life. The Narration people are forever in your debt." Marcus shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do, sir." Elena watched this exchange with amazement. Marcus had just performed impossible surgery and saved not just a life but potentially prevented a war. And he acted like it was no big deal. That, she realized, was what made humans special. They didn't just rise to meet challenges. They did it without expecting thanks or recognition. They did it because it was right. 3 hours later, Kira was sitting up in the medical bed, looking almost completely normal. Her blue skin had returned to its bright, healthy color, and the silver patterns were glowing softly again. Elena checked her vital signs one more time and smiled. "Perfect," Elena said. "All your levels are back to normal." Kira touched the small bandages over her gill openings where Marcus had inserted the cables. "I can breathe properly again." I forgot how good that felt. Prime Minister Coral sat beside his daughter's bed. He had not left her side since she woke up. "How do you feel, my child?" "Strong," Kira replied. "Better than I have in days." She looked across the room where Marcus was cleaning his improvised surgical tools. "I want to thank him properly." Marcus was putting his modified cables back into his toolbox. He had refused all offers to rest, saying he wanted to make sure his tools were properly stored in case someone else needed them later. "Marcus," Elena called, "Kira wants to speak with you." Marcus walked over to the bed, still carrying his toolbox. "How are you feeling?" "Alive, thanks to you," Kira said. "I remember very little, but my father told me what you did." "You saved my life with communication cables?" Marcus smiled slightly. "They're very high-quality cables." Kira laughed, a sound like water flowing over stones. "I think it was more than the cables. Dr. Vex told me that no one else thought it was possible." Dr. Vex, who was reviewing the medical data from the procedure, looked up from his instruments. "I must admit, Human, your approach was unconventional but effective. I have never seen anything like it." Dr. Kelt's crystal form glowed with what Elena knew was respect. The precision required for that procedure was remarkable. To control 2 instruments simultaneously while working blind. It should have been impossible, Marcus shrugged. I've had a lot of practice fixing things in tight spaces. Commander Thale approached the group. Marcus, I owe you an apology. When you first suggested this procedure, I thought it was madness. So did I, Marcus admitted. But sometimes madness is the only option left. Prime Minister Coral stood up and faced Marcus. Human, what you have done today goes beyond medicine. You have prevented a crisis that could have led to war between our peoples. Marcus looked confused. War? I was just trying to help someone who was sick. If my daughter had died here, Prime Minister Coral explained, my people would have believed that the station's medical facilities were inadequate. Some would have demanded retaliation. Your actions have saved more than one life today. Elena watched this conversation with growing amazement. Marcus had just prevented an interstellar incident, and he seemed genuinely surprised that anyone would consider it a big deal. I have a proposal, Prime Minister Coral continued. The Narration government would like to offer you full citizenship in our world. You would be welcomed as a hero and given any position you desire. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's very generous, sir, but I already have a job. Fixing air conditioning systems? Dr. Vex asked in disbelief. Someone has to do it, Marcus replied seriously, and I'm good at it, Elena laughed. She couldn't help it. Here was a man who had just performed impossible surgery, saved a life, and prevented a war. And he was more concerned about who would maintain the station's environmental systems. There's more, Commander Thale said. He was holding a communication device that had been buzzing quietly throughout the conversation. Dr. Vasquez, I've been receiving messages from medical facilities across the galaxy. Word of this procedure has already spread. Elena felt her stomach flutter. What kind of messages? Requests, Commander Thale replied. Hospitals want to know if this technique can be used for other species. Medical schools want to study the procedure. The Galactic Medical Council wants to officially recognize it as a new treatment protocol. Dr. Nera swirled in an excited pattern. We should document everything. This could revolutionize emergency medicine. Marcus looked uncomfortable. It's not that revolutionary. I just used what was available. That's exactly what makes it revolutionary. Elena said, You didn't wait for the perfect tools or the ideal conditions. You solved the problem with what you had. Kira reached out and took Marcus's hand. In our culture, we have a saying, the deepest currents flow silently. You are like that. Quiet strength that accomplishes what others cannot. Marcus's communication device beeped. He looked at it and frowned. I'm sorry, but I have a call about a broken water recycler on level 7. I should probably go fix that. Everyone stared at him in amazement. Prime Minister Coral laughed, a deep sound like ocean waves. Remarkable. You save my daughter's life and prevent an interstellar crisis, and you're worried about a broken water recycler? Water recyclers are important too, Marcus said seriously. If people can't drink clean water, they get sick. Elena realized that this was exactly what made Marcus special. To him, every problem was worth solving, whether it was saving a princess or fixing a broken pipe. He didn't see himself as a hero. He just saw himself as someone who fixed things when they were broken. Before you go, Commander Thale said, there's one more thing. He handed Marcus an official-looking document. The Galactic Medical Council has decided to award you their highest civilian honor for medical achievement. Marcus looked at the document with confusion. I'm not a doctor. No, Elena said, smiling. You're something better? You're a problem solver? Marcus carefully put the document in his toolbox along with his modified cables. Thank you, but I really do need to go fix that water recycler. As Marcus headed toward the door, Prime Minister Coral called after him, Human, if you ever change your mind about that citizenship offer, you will always be welcome in Narration space. Marcus paused at the door and looked back. Thank you, sir, but I think I'll stay here. Someone needs to keep this station running. After Marcus left, the medical bay was quiet for a moment. Then Dr. Vex spoke up. I have studied medicine for over 200 years, he said. I have worked with the greatest healers in the galaxy, but I have never seen anything like what that human just did. Elena nodded. He didn't just save Kira's life. He showed us all something important. What's that? Kira asked. Elena thought about how to explain it. He showed us that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places, and that the willingness to help others is more important than having all the right tools. Prime Minister Coral put his arm around his daughter. The humans are a remarkable species. They see problems where others see impossibilities. Commander Thale was reviewing the reports on his communication device. This story is already spreading throughout the galaxy. The human who saved a princess with communication cables. Elena smiled. I doubt Marcus would want to be famous for this. Probably not, Kira agreed. But people need to hear this story. They need to know that heroes don't always come from where you expect them. 3 days later, Elena was working in her office when Marcus stopped by. He was carrying his toolbox and had grease stains on his uniform. How's the water recycler? Elena asked. Fixed, Marcus replied. But now there's a problem with the atmospheric processors on level 12. Elena laughed. There's always something broken on this station. That's what keeps life interesting, Marcus said. He paused at the door. How's Kira doing? Perfect. She went home yesterday with her father. She wanted me to give you this. Elena handed him a small crystal sculpture of a Narration swimmer. Marcus examined it carefully. It's beautiful. She made it herself, Elena explained. It's a traditional gift given to someone who saves your life. In Narration culture, it means you're part of her family now. Marcus carefully put the sculpture in his toolbox next to his medical award and his modified cables. I should probably get going. Those atmospheric processors won't fix themselves. Elena watched him leave and smiled. Marcus had returned to his normal life as if nothing had happened. But throughout the galaxy, the story of the human engineer who saved a princess was inspiring others to look for solutions in unexpected places. And on Station Alpha 7, whenever someone had a problem that seemed impossible to solve, they remembered Marcus Rivera, the man who proved that, with enough determination and creativity, there was always a way to help. The man who fixed things, no matter how broken they seemed.